So one of the things I would like to do on this channel is when politicians give speeches to give my direct reaction to the speech. I think one of the mistakes I make and many other people make is instead of watching speeches themselves, they just watch news sound bites, which pick and choose what they want out of the speech and then give their interpretation. So I'm going to try to go through the whole speech, give my interpretation, but hopefully this way you can see whether or not you agree with my interpretation because I'll be playing the whole video. Now, normally when I would do this, I'd like to watch the video first of the speech, have some kind of idea of what I'm going to do. But I just figured for this first time, I've seen like 3 minutes of this speech, and there wasn't really anything of substance in the first 3 minutes. But so it'll be new to me as it is to you, and I'll just give my honest, real-time reactions to it. So without any further ado, here we go. Standing ovation.
Thank you very much, Leader McCarthy. I look forward to working with you in a bipartisan way for the good of our country, respecting our constituents. You're every one of you. I respect you and the constituents who sent each and every one of us here. They expect and deserve for us to try to find our common ground. And we must try to do that. Stand our ground where we can't, but always extend the hand of friendship. Thank you, Kevin McCarthy, for your leadership. I look forward to working with you.
That sounds good, and that's exactly what you should be saying as a politician, but let's be honest, that's clearly not the case. We can see from Pelosi already refusing to have any discussion of giving any funding for a border wall whatsoever. She's basically ran, as did most of the Democrats, on we will do anything we can to impeach Trump or investigate every area of his life. So, and she's also said bad things in the past about people that supported Trump. So maybe this is a change of heart. I doubt it. I guess I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's trying to have a change of heart and work with the other side. But her actions as recently as this past week don't show that to be the case to me.
Congratulations on being the leader of the party. And congratulations to each and every one of you. New members of Congress, newly re-elected members of Congress, thank you for your courage to run for office and to serve in this distinguished body. Every 2 years, we gather in this chamber for a sacred ritual under the dome of this temple of democracy, the capital of the United States. We renew the great American experiment.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, and I do think that more people should run. That's one of the things I'll be running for office. I encourage more average working-class people to be running for Congress. Though I will say she makes it sound more noble than what I think a lot of people pursue it. For example, Pelosi's got extremely rich over her long tenure in office. It's one of the reasons I propose things like term limits. So I don't know that everyone's there just for service, but again, it's okay for her to say that. I'm not going to really bash her for that part of the speech. Though, remember, Congress is even less, it's like basically the least popular institution in the United States. Their approval ratings are consistently around like 20%. They don't seem to be able to get much done. And I think a lot of that's because regardless of who's in president, whether it be W. Bush or Obama, they have over and over ceded power to the presidency and to the courts. And so they're becoming a less and less important branch of Congress, which arguably I think, as the Constitution's written, they should be probably the most important branch of government, seeing as how they're the closest to the people, particularly the House of Representatives. So, you know, I'm not bashing her for this part of her speech. It's fine to say things like this. It comes off as eloquent to me, but hopefully she will take that to heart about how it is a sacred thing and start working more as legislators, working together to pass laws as opposed to just relying on the president and the courts to have all this power. Hopefully Congress decides to take back their power and, you know, actually hold those things accountable. So
I'm particularly proud to be the woman Speaker of the House of this Congress, which marks the 100th year of women having the right to vote.
And again, that's fine. Like, I didn't mind, for example, when Obama won. Like, I think it's bad to vote for someone based on race, but if I was a black American, you can't help but have some, like, real pride in the fact that finally a black American got elected. The same with being a woman in politics. Like, if Hillary would have won, even though I despised Hillary, like, I could understand a woman having that reaction. Or any American. You don't have to be a woman to be proud of that. Though I don't think her being a woman is a reason to run. So I don't mind Pelosi saying this, but I think too much of the Democratic strategy is just being like, well, I'm a woman, or, this cultural Marxism, this identity politics that's played separate, like somehow that women good, and it ends up women good, men bad, or, people of color good, white people bad, things like that. So I think that that's a fine line, and I think that this is dragging the Democratic Party away from where they should be, which is focusing on working class people. Instead, we're creating division. So I'm not saying she's doing that right here, but there's a danger of that. Notice how anytime you mention anything about women, that's universal applause. People really like it. It's a very safe thing
And that
to say.
we all have the ability and the privilege to serve with over 100 women members of Congress, the largest number in history.
Again, not really concerned about their gender. Hopefully they all govern well.
Leader McCarthy said, each of us comes to this chamber strengthened by the trust of our constituents and the love of our families. Let us congratulate and welcome all of the families who are here today. Thank you to our families.
I hate these speeches how people have to stand up every time you say something, empty platitude. I mean, yeah, it's fine to say that. Pelosi's right to say that, but come on.
Let me take the privilege of thanking my dear husband, Paul, and our 5 children. Our 5 children, Nancy, Corinne, Christine, Jacqueline, Paul, and Alexandra. And our 9 grandchildren, Madeline and Alexander, Liam, Sean, and Ryan, Thomas and Paul, Bella, and Octavio. We're so proud of all of our grandchildren. And we're proud of everyone's grandchildren and children who are here today. We'll see more of them. I'm also proud of my D'Alessandro family who was here from Baltimore for us too. In that spirit, my mother and father and my brother Tommy, who was also mayor of Baltimore, taught us through their example that public service is a noble calling, that we should serve with our hearts full of love, and that America's heart is full of love.
Okay, again, that's good. That's a good platitude. But let's not forget, Pelosi's gotten incredibly wealthy over her time just serving the country. Do you think, military people serve the country? Do they get this incredibly rich like Pelosi did? Of course not. So again, these type of platitudes are good to say. It used to be, I think the idea was of the founding fathers, most of them were like landowners, that it was actually like they had to leave their farm to go serve in Congress for 2 or 4 years. And they basically didn't want to go because they knew they would probably be losing money because they couldn't manage their assets at home. But they went because they did think it was a service and then went back. Nowadays, it's a career. You see people in Washington, they're either serving for decades like Pelosi here, or they're bouncing in and out, becoming lobbyists after they serve, or working for think tanks and things like that, these revolving doors. So it's not just as simple service. She's saying that's nice to think that that's what it would be. And then she talks about love in the heart. Do you really think like that's what she has for Trump when she's discussing him? Of course not. It's not just the idea of having love in their heart. And I again think that's a platitude that sometimes, is overplayed. Love solves everything. I had a big complaint of this with the media and the Democrats portrayed during the Republican National Convention that Trump's platforms were all about fear and the Democrats were all about love. But then you watch the DNC platform and it was like, we're all going to die from global warming and Trump's a horrible racist and the cops are all these brutal racists that are shooting unarmed black people. It's like, okay, I'm not even saying that some of those problems, that's fine if you want to bring them up, but let's stop pretending that it all comes from a place of love. I don't think that's necessarily the case. So it's, again, I'm not just criticizing Pelosi for this because it's something that Trump would say the same, Republicans would say the same, but to me, like when you're saying things like, oh, we approach everything from a part of love, it's just an empty platitude to me.
singing that to us last night. And my comrade as an Italian-American, with that pride, all that pride, I want to acknowledge Tony Bennett, who is here with us today as well. Thank you, Tony.
Well, the skull on the bottom's pretty happy here.
He helped free the concentration camps during the time of World War II. He marched with Martin Luther King. He is a true American patriot. Thank you, Tony. And again, I want to thank my constituents from San Francisco who have entrusted me to represent them in Congress in the spirit of St. Francis, the patron saint of San Francisco. And his song of St. Francis is our anthem, "Make me a channel of thy peace." We heard that in church this morning, but it is our mission.
Again, a channel of thy peace. It would be nice if they actually had that. Now, as I said in my previous video, it seems as if the Democrats fracturing into two kind of wings. Neither wing I particularly like. You have the Bernie Ocasio-Cortez style, like socialist progressive type wing, and then you have the kind of what I would call like establishment neo-lib, and that would be your Pelosi's, your Hillary Clinton type wing. Pelosi herself, she hardly seems to be representing the patron saint of peace very well when she can't help but froth at the mouth at more conflict with Russia. She's very disturbed that Trump might do something like pull troops out of Syria or Afghanistan. She's always wanting more conflict with Russia. That hardly seems like it's this kind of Orwellian talk that the Democrats pretend to be the party of peace, yet they recently have been all about more regime change wars. And this seemed to really kick off with Obama, though Bill Clinton obviously was guilty of this as well. But for God's sakes, Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. He, I believe, is the first president in the history of our country to serve 2 terms without one single day not being involved in a war. And it's not just wars he inherited. He bombed and droned people more than any president before him. He overthrew Libya, wanted to overthrow Syria, etc. So Pelosi seems to be right and along with that. So that hardly seems like something the patron saint of peace would want.
And let me thank our men and women in uniform, our veterans, and our military families and caregivers, whose service reminds us of our mission to make the future worthy of their sacrifice. To our men and women in uniform.
Always good to thank people in uniform. And hopefully she's sincere about that.
We enter this new Congress with a sense of great hope and confidence for the future and deep humility and prayerfulness in the face of challenges ahead. Our nation is at an historic moment. 2 months ago, the American people spoke and demanded a new dawn. They called upon the beauty of our Constitution, our system of checks and balances that protects our democracy, remembering that the legislative branch is Article 1.
Okay, so that's what I was saying earlier. So yeah, hopefully they will legislate as opposed to just pushing things like executive power. Now, the Democrats particularly I find funny because they're all for executive power when it was Obama doing it, when you had a Republican-controlled Congress. So they loved things like DACA. They loved the kind of open borders policies that Obama was pushing. They loved how he selectively enforced. That's the role of the executive branch, to enforce the laws that the legislative branch passes. So they loved him being able to go into different countries without Congress having to declare war. They loved him selectively enforcing which immigration laws. Now, all of a sudden that Trump's in there, they realize that was a bad idea. So I'm with them, though, that I think that the executive branch has gotten too powerful. So they should start legislating, which is exactly why they should be passing laws that, they should be working on a healthcare bill. They should be working on immigration bills. But instead, it's just more of the same. Just get piecemeal stuff done. Nothing really gets done. Complain about the guy in charge, launch unending investigations, and that be that. Also, I think it's funny she says that people voted for a new dawn. Yeah, a fresh new face to run things. Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, a real new dawn there, right?
First branch of government, co-equal to the presidency and to the judiciary. They wanted Congress that delivers results for the people, opening up opportunity and lifting up their lives. We're hearing the voice of the future there. How beautiful. When our new members take the oath,
I don't know. I know I'm biased, but just sometimes her smile seems so fake to me. It's probably unfair to say. That's just my honest gut reaction. I don't like some people, and again, I don't say that about all Democrats, but it's just something about, I don't know. Maybe she's just a little upset that she's kind of being, interrupted a little, and so she's doing her best to play it off. But just saying, it seemed a little fake to me. Not a big deal at all, but
our Congress will be refreshed and our democracy will be strengthened by their optimism, idealism, and patriotism of this transformative freshman class. Congratulations to all of you in the freshman class.
15 people, by the way, didn't vote. Democrats didn't vote for Nancy as Speaker of the House. Many of them were of the freshman class, and a lot of the freshman Democrats that are coming in are actually already starting to kind of be at odds with Pelosi about, Green New Deal type things. A lot of the incoming people are more of the progressive wing, and they want basically free everything, free healthcare, free education, eliminate of carbon or gasoline, things like that. And Pelosi, the more establishment branch, isn't really going for it right now. So, of course she's going to say congratulations to them, as she should. But I do think that there's going to be some tension between that new wing, particularly a lot of these incoming people, and the establishment Democrats like Pelosi.
Working together, we will redeem the promise of the American dream for every family, advancing progress for every community.
Redeem the promise of the American dream. That sounds a lot like Make America Great Again, doesn't it? Yet these same people would say that Make America Great Again, racist. Redeem, which means change, go back and recapture the dream for every American. That sounds very similar to me to Make America Great Again. So I wonder if that'll be called out as being racist. Methinks not, because neither what she said or Trump said is racist.
We must be pioneers of the future. This Congress must accelerate a future that advances America's preeminence in the world and opens up opportunities for all. Building an economy that gives all Americans the tools they need to succeed in the 21st century. Public education, workforce development, good-paying jobs, and secure pensions.
That all sounds well. It's not just Pelosi that's guilty of this. Republicans, people like Trump do this as well. It's easy to say, we want great job serving and great wages, great infrastructure. Okay, well, I know this isn't exactly the type of speech where you're giving specifics on that, but again, this isn't hardly earth-shattering stuff. And I would argue that she's right to focus on, notice she said Americans, open up to all Americans. It seems to me lately her and a lot of, particularly Democrats in the California type area, are focused more on illegal aliens than they are the Americans that they're supposed to be representing. So perhaps this is a change of heart. We'll see, though I doubt it.
We have heard from too many families who wonder in this time of innovation and globalization if they have a place in the economy of the future. We must remove all doubt that they do and say to them individually, we will have an economy that works for you. Let us declare that we will call upon bold thinking to address the disparity of income in America, which is at the root of the crisis of confidence felt by so many Americans.
Okay, but her party is the party that gets the most votes from the extremely rich and the poor. Her state, for example, has the biggest income disparity, where you have the richest Americans live in California and the poorest Americans. They have the overwhelmingly the most amount of homeless and things like that. So what types of, if she's going to push the same policies that have been pushed in her state, also her state level being controlled by Democrats, how is that going to solve this income disparity? Again, these are more platitudes. It sounds good to say that, but what options are they going to take? Just tax the rich more and give to the poor? That doesn't seem to be working. And it seems to be often that what ends up happening is a lot of these extremely wealthy people that they're claiming that they're going to tax more find loopholes, and it just ends up being more of the middle class that is wiped out. So let's see what new ideas they come up with. I hope they do have some.
As Justice Brandeis said, we may have democracy or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of the few, but we cannot have both. We must end that injustice.
By the way, she's going to talk about ending this. She's the 1% of the 1%. I always find it ironic how people discuss, oh, we need to stop, the wealth in the hands of the few. You have her and other extremely wealthy politicians. Bernie's another one, right? That'll say something that's, or celebrities in Hollywood that'll say things like this. And it's like, okay, start with yourself. How much money does Pelosi really need? Probably live comfortably off $150,000 a year, right? Buy a house, good to go, right? Or whatever the standard of living, and then give the rest of that money away. No. Instead, what she means is tax other people. It's always, their morality always begins at someone else's doorstep. They personally shouldn't have to do anything on their own. And that doesn't make you a moral person, by the way. Morality is what you're doing when no one's watching. Morality is what you choose to do personally that affects you, not demanding other people act in a way that you feel is moral. That doesn't make you necessarily moral. So, again, she's not necessarily speaking to morality here, but that's kind of usually where this goes. If she truly believes there's a problem with income disparity, seeing as how she's the 1% of the 1%, she would do something with her vast amounts of wealth. I'm thinking she probably won't do that, which proves that this is just more empty platitudes.
And restore the public's faith in a better future for themselves and their children. We must be champions of the middle class and all those who aspire to it, because the middle class is the backbone of our democracy. It has been since the birth. It has been since the birth of our democracy.
Okay, I agree with this, and this is the area that the Democrats should be pushing. They should be going back to being champions for the working class people and advocating a route to the middle class. But again, in the areas that are most heavily Democrat, we see the most total wipeout of the middle class. They haven't really proposed any policies that I've seen that would benefit the middle class. It's all about identity politics, taxing the rich to pay for the poor, things like that. Doesn't seem to be any articulation of policies that would help the middle class. In fact, the middle class at least perceives, particularly like working class manufacturing people, that a lot of the Democratic push policies, such as the TPP, NAFTA, and things like that, actually were going to take a lot of those types of jobs away. So it seems that these kind of big, in my opinion at least, the big government policies of a high taxation seem to always erode the middle class, and it leads to more wealth concentration at the top and more people at the bottom depending on the government, but a harder time for the people in the middle that want to make a go of it, be like small business owners and things like that. So we'll see. Maybe in the future weeks, again, as I said in my last video, if you checked it out, despite the fact I'm very skeptical, and I will remain to be, I am cheering for Pelosi and the Democrats to prove me wrong. I'm a country before party type person, and I'll be more than willing, if the Democrats come up with great ideas and ends up benefiting the country and the middle class greatly, I'd be more than willing to eat crow. It would be well worth it to be wrong in that argument. So I will be cheering for them to do well, even though you can tell from this video I'm skeptical.
Aristotle said, "It is manifest that the best political community is formed by citizens of the middle class, in which the middle class is large and stronger than any of the other classes. We must fight for the middle class that is fair and fiscally sound, protecting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security."
The Democrats certainly aren't fiscally sound. Now, I won't be so bold as to claim the Republicans are either. Once upon a time, you had people like the Tea Party that was like, hey, we're tired of Obama spending into debt, but then Trump gets in and we see him spending at debt levels actually above those of what Obama was. Yet, where are the Republicans complaining about this? It always seems like the Republicans talk about fiscal responsibility, and then once they get power, they throw it out the window. But certainly the Democrats, this would be a welcome change if they are fiscally responsible. Yeah, it seems like they're pushing more and more free stuff for everyone type thing. That's not fiscal responsibility. That's exploding the debt, which is going to be further burdensome on the children and future generations, which she's claiming to want to help out.
We must also face the existential threat of our time, the climate crisis, a crisis manifested in natural disasters of epic proportions. The American people understand the urgency. The people are ahead of the Congress. The Congress must join them. And that is why...
The problem with climate change, as I've explained before, there doesn't seem to be a debate. It's like a religious nature to it. It's all the scientists agree, and therefore you have to listen to whatever plan we say. No, that's not true. I'll concede that almost all scientists agree that the climate is changing. And most would probably say that it's warming. That's fine. I'm not going to be contentious with that. But there's huge discrepancies on how much of a problem it'll be, what policies we should enact, how much those policies would have other offset costs. how much those policies would actually be able to solve, what would be the ultimate impact of solving a portion of that as opposed to all of climate change. Very nuanced questions. The problem is this is all the nuances taken out of it, where it's like you just had Chuck Todd the other day say, I won't have climate deniers on my show. And people like Pelosi and the Democrats will constantly be like, look, there's already consensus. We're not going to argue about it. We need to do this. Take the Paris Climate Accord. Most studies showed that it would have did very little. Many of the scientists, like you could hash out a real debate with this, with people be like, well, when do you think, what scientists, I had a friend tell me, oh, within 100 years, it'll be, we're beyond redemption. We're all going to be screwed because of the damage to the climate. And I'm like, well, what percentage will we need to lower? And he kind of gave me some number. And I'm like, okay, so we look at the climate accord in Paris. We see that would only have done a fraction of what you're saying would be necessary to stop us from extinction. So why even argue about it at this point? And it also is dubious because the same people that believe that she believes this is the existential threat of our time, as does Al Gore, as does Leo DiCaprio, and all these other people that are flying around on private jets, using more pollution in one day than probably the average person will use in a year. They have several homes. They're huge homes. They're heated and cooled. That cost tremendous amounts of fossil fuels. They take motorcades to places. It always seems like it's do for thee and not for me, where it's the middle class that she was just talking about, and even the lower class that end up having to pay more and make more sacrifices, while the wealthy go about their ways and just get to judge us all as immoral if we don't take care of the problem. If she really thought it was an existential threat, she would be changing her life behaviors to be more in line of what she thinks we all ought to emulate to be able to solve this existential threat. For example, if I think that ISIS is an existential threat and therefore we need to search everyone at airports, I certainly am not going to say, oh, but not me, don't search me, right? That seems ridiculous. You kind of live up to the mantra that you're preaching. And we could see, like in Paris, what's going on, where they are proposing things like carbon taxes, which I think you'll start to see to come out of the Democrats, because the only way you get to alternative energies is grossly subsidize the alternative energies to make them profitable from the government, which means a massive increase in taxes, or to make fossil fuels unprofitable, which means that you end up taxing fossil fuels so they cost so much that then the renewable energy becomes profitable. That's the effort they took in France, and they ended up paying like $9 a gallon for gas until the people revolted. And who revolted? Who was affected the most? Well, it was the working class, the people that needed to pay to be able to drive to their job. They were fed up with it. And so it always seems, I find these claims dubious when people talk about how this is a huge threat and there's all this scientific consensus. Well, not really. Let's get to the nuance. What's going on, particularly, let's have an adult conversation about it. And why do the solutions almost always seem to be poor and middle class people get screwed over, whereas we, the wealthy elite, can continue to trudge on? You think Pelosi cares if gas is $9 a gallon in California? She can care less. That's a pittance to her. So I'm just skeptical of those type of claims.
We have created a select committee on climate crisis. The entire Congress must work to put an end to the inaction and denial of science that threaten the planet and the future.
And often it's a misnomer when they say there's a denial. Like, I would be considered by Pelosi probably a climate denier. And I'm not. It's not a denial of science. It's wanting to have a nuanced discussion about the science. Only someone acting in a very non-scientific way would say, it's settled, we can't have any discussion. Remember, they've been wrong before. In the 70s, they were predicting a mini ice age coming. Al Gore and people were predicting in the 90s that by the early 2000s, there would be cities underwater. Al Gore predicted things would be much worse than they are. These predictions are always revised. So we could have at any one of those points said, the science is settled. And then the science ended up not being fully accurate. That's why you need people on all sides looking at the data, having nuanced discussions of the data. And again, just because the science might be settled that warming's occurring, it's not settled on how bad it'll be, how much of an effect humans have on it, what we could do to roll back that, what would be the best ways to go about it. So there's all kinds of conversations we had. To just say that people are unscientific or climate deniers or things like that is a cop-out, and it's just a way to force their policies, which, all by the way, almost always hurt poor people, down people's throats without having any discussion. One side didn't seem to be as pleased with that.
This is a decision. It's a public health decision about clean air, clean water for our children's health. It's a decision for...
By the way, clean air and clean water, that's not necessarily about climate change. Like, I find it disgusting what happened at Flint, right? They didn't even have drinkable water. Children getting sick because of water. That has little to do with climate change. That has to do with the EPA and the people that were in charge of those trying to make decisions basically to garner wealth that ended up costing children their lives. And we see the same all over the country with things like actual overfishing, pollution of rivers. That has little to do with climate change. That's real world stuff that we could affect right now. I'm for all of that. I'm for being able to fix that. But again, I think we lose sight of that in the more grandioser scheme. I just read Tucker Carlson's book. He has a very good section about how it's like no one cares about that stuff anymore because all the environmentalists are now fighting for the big apple, climate change, the big goal. And so they've left like streams and garbage collection and things like that go to the air where no one really focuses on that anymore.
America's global preeminence in the green technologies. It is a decision, a security decision to keep us all safe and a moral decision to be good stewards of God's creation. We have no illusions that our work will be easy and that all of us in this chamber will always agree. But let each of us pledge that when we disagree, we respect each other and we respect the truth.
Okay, but respect what truth? Like the truth, that's again, the truth is that it's a nuanced conversation and she's calling people deniers that don't agree 100% with her. So that's not the truth, that's her truth, which is kind of a trick you see employed, a postmodernist trick that you saw, for example, in the Kavanaugh hearings when Blasey Ford was discussing about what happened. You heard people like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris saying her truth, not the truth, her truth. So when Nancy's talking about the truth here, what's she talking about? The truth that what? Like, give us the specifics. That, like, yeah, we understand the climate is changing and man has something to do with it. But that's the consensus. The question then is how much? Again, like I said earlier, so... And when she talks about being respectful, yeah, I agree that we should be respectful. And that goes both ways. Everyone wants to say it's just Trump that's not respectful. But that's not true. We saw that from the Democrats and the media that they're unrespectful towards Trump. So it's a two-way street. A lot of people, I'm biased, I admit, but I think the disrespect started long before Trump ran, where it seems like the mainstream media, which is overwhelmingly leaned towards the establishment Democrats, places like academia, the cultural institutions have been quite disrespectful to flyover country, and like people that live in rural places tend to vote conservative. They're all uneducated, like Hicks and things like that. So I think they've been disrespectful to those populations. But I'm also common sense enough to know that it does go both ways. So yeah, I agree we need more respect going both ways. Hopefully this is a changing of the guard and that's what we'll start to see, though again I'm skeptical.
We will debate and advance good ideas no matter where they come from. And in that spirit, Democrats will be offering the Senate Republican appropriations legislation to reopen government later today.
Right, and they have said that they refuse to even give a dime for the wall. So that doesn't sound like a compromise. That sounds like they're trying to prove a point. And I've even had liberal people tell me that, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. The Democrats are basically sticking to their guns and saying, giving Trump the finger and saying, you're not going to get a dime for this wall. So they know exactly what they're doing. That's not a compromise. That's not in the spirit of compromise. And they know that.
We will do so to meet the needs of the American people, to protect our borders, and to respect our workers.
What are they doing to protect borders? And granted, the establishment Republicans are just as guilty. How many decades have we had where nothing's been done at the border? More and more people come across illegally. Every proposed plan that's ever seems to be suggested, there's always just generic funding for border security. Okay, what's it doing? Pelosi says that a wall's immoral, yet she voted for a fence. What's the difference? Like, that's the issue. They play lip service to this we'll do something about the border. Both sides do this, and then nothing gets done. Same with healthcare. All of these issues, nothing ever gets done. So when she talks about doing what's best for America and protecting the borders, what exactly is their plan going to outline for border security? Most of the time it's just like, we need to allow more legal immigrants in. That's not border security. That's just finding another way to push your agenda. They always they're always giving lip service to, give amnesty to the people here, some of which I wouldn't mind. like some of the DACA people and things like that. But they always want to do that before border security. Well, why is that? Well, because it'll encourage more people to come. Because if you saw, hey, look, all those people that went in illegally before, they all got amnesty and became U.S. citizens or legal U.S. resident. Hey, we're going to go too. Then we have more caravans and all the problems that come with the caravans. And even if you're not someone who thinks that illegal immigration, once it gets to the United States, is bad, keep in mind that all the abuse that goes on with these caravans, something like Amnesty International said 80% of women in these caravans are sexually assaulted, human trafficking goes on, coyotes are charging incredible expenses for this. Like, it's a terrible trip. Yet the Democrats seem to, not all of them, but a lot of them seem to be kind of dog whistling to people in these countries. Yeah, it's okay, come over. When they know full well most of them won't legally be allowed in. So it's setting up a really terrible situation. And let's not forget, let's hope that she's changing tax here and the Democrat leadership will change tax. But it seems like oftentimes they're far more focused on illegal immigrants and their health and safety than they are the people, the actual citizens of this country. Pelosi herself coming from San Francisco, like, there's so many homeless there, but she seems more concerned about the illegals than she does with the people that are her own constituents.
And I pledge that this Congress will be transparent, bipartisan, and unifying, that we will seek to reach across the aisle in this chamber and across divisions across our nation.
Okay, then I guess she wouldn't start off by saying no funding at all for the wall. And as far as transparency, as someone who's been heavily involved in researching the Russia investigation, it seemed to me at every turn the Democrats were constantly the party saying, don't release that. It would hurt methods and sources. It'll hurt methods and sources. Obama also said he was going to be a very transparent president, and we saw what happened there. So, again, this is an empty platitude. It's easy to say, sure, we're going to be bipartisan. We're going to be transparent. Let's see it in action. Now, I don't really condemn her for saying that. Of course, that's what she's going to say in a speech like this, but words are cheap. Let's see what the action are. And so far, just her actions this week and with the bill that they're going to put forward shows to me that they're not very interested in bipartisanship.
In the past 2 years, the American people have spoken. Tens of thousands of public events were held. Hundreds of thousands of people turned out. Millions of calls were made. Countless families, even sick little children. Our little lobbyists, bravely came forward to tell their stories, and they made a big difference. Now the floor of this House must be America's town hall, where people will see our debates and where their voices will be heard and affect our decisions.
Now, if you remember just a couple weeks ago when, before the shutdown started, Schumer and Pelosi and Trump were all sitting in a meeting and the cameras were there and Trump starts going off about like, yeah, that's what I want funding for the wall. And what does Pelosi say? Mr. Trump, let's not discuss this in front of the cameras. Let's have a conversation out. Now, does that sound like transparency? Does that sound like America's town hall? Trump was the one who was like, yeah, let's do it. Cameras are here. Let's let people hear what we say. Pelosi and Schumer, they wanted to have the discussion behind closed doors. So, again, empty platitude. Her past seems to suggest that's not the way she is, that it's not going to be a town hall in open forum, that it's not going to be transparent. But, again, I guess we'll see. Hopefully she's changing.
Transparency will be the order of the day. And as Mr. Jeffries, our distinguished chairman, said, we will follow our mandate for the people. And I thank you for your kind nomination and accept those kind remarks on behalf of the entire House Democratic Caucus who made all of those victories possible. Some of them in a bipartisan way. Empower our mandate for the people to lower health care costs and prescription drug prices and protect people with pre-existing medical conditions.
I mean, that's something that both parties have been saying. The Republicans failed miserably. Remember, they were going to repeal Obamacare. Well, that didn't happen when they had the president, the House, and the Senate. So let's see what the Democrats bring. Yeah, I'm all aboard that. I think I'm probably going to have the opposite solution that Pelosi will. Pelosi will want a big government solution, something like Medicare for all. I prefer a more free market solution. But I think both sides should be able to agree that the current system is not good. It's a failure. And try to reach some bipartisan conclusion on what to do about that.
To increase paychecks by rebuilding America with green and modern infrastructure from sea to shining sea. We look forward to working with the president on that. to pass H.R. 1 to restore integrity to government so that people can have confidence that in a government that works for the people, not the special interest. H.R. 1.
I'll have to read that bill specifically, but again, keep in mind which party gets the majority. Like, look at the last big election. Which party got the majority of corporate donors? It was Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. There are always ways to get around these things. We see it with all sorts of lobbying practice, such as going to Hillary Clinton's foundation for pay-to-play, things like that. Never forget, Pelosi's preaching this. That sounds great. How did she make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in her tenure of working in Congress? And we're supposed to believe that she's the voice for ending lobbyists buying votes? It just seems, it seems hypocritical.
This House will take overdue legislation that has bipartisan support. Bipartisan support in the Congress and across the country. We will make our community safer and We will make America fairer by passing the Equality Act to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community.
What laws are there that on the book right now that encourage discrimination against LGBTQ? I don't know of any. I thought it was already illegal to discriminate based on people's sexual preference. Now, if she's talking about like a baker having to bake a cake for gay people, I severely disagree, because that has to do with someone's basically religious beliefs. They shouldn't have to bake that cake. Isn't it funny, the same party that says that has no problem with business after business kicking out people wearing MAGA hats or that are Trump supporters or conservative. They have no problem with Google or Twitter or Facebook kicking off people that are conservatives from their platforms. And these are basically monopolies. But a small town baker refusing to bake a cake for a gay wedding, and that all of a sudden's a huge deal that needs to go to the Supreme Court. So it's like they have their priorities mixed up, but it's intentional. That's why they're doing it. Obviously I'm against any discrimination of any people based on their sexual preference. I was for gay marriage. I think we keep harping on these issues as kind of a division. Who's discriminating against gay people? I don't know, maybe it's out there, but shouldn't the laws on the book already make that illegal? So I guess I would have to do more research to be totally honest, but I'm not exactly sure. It seems like another platitude to just be like, we're going to make sure LGBT aren't discriminated against. And also, let's not forget that trans is very different than gay. What is she talking about here? Is she going to say it's discriminatory to not allow transitioning men to women to compete against women in sports or things like that? If so, I heavily disagree with her.
And we will make America more American by protecting our patriotic, courageous dreamers.
What does that even mean? America more American by protecting dreamers? That's not more American. You might say it's the right thing to do, but why is that more American? Makes no sense whatsoever. Again, it's just there's these platitudes. Love solves all. We'll become more American by being more diverse. It's like, yeah, those are all empty platitudes. What does that mean? Okay, you want to protect the dreamers, make sure they get stay here. Remember, the dreamers, by the way, she talks about the importance of co-equal branches of government. That was Obama unilaterally as an executive decision doing that. That wasn't voted on by Congress. So funny now that she's supporting that executive decision and that what I would consider abuse of executive power.
All three of those legislative initiatives have bipartisan support in this body. And when we're talking about the dreamers, let us remember what President Reagan said in his last speech as President of the United States. I urge you all to read it. It's a beautiful speech. He said, if we ever...
By the way, I urge you all to read like what all these same Democrats were saying when Bill Clinton was president, saying it was important to have walls up, it was important to protect our border, things like that. Now we just etch over that point in history when all of the Democrats said that. Now it's just, no. Walls are racist. That's what Pelosi believes. When 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, their party was saying the exact opposite thing. But let's hear what Reagan said.
Close the door to new Americans, our leadership role in the world will soon be lost. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, whatever. That's not a call for illegal immigration or open borders. That's totally different. That's a call for legal immigration. No country can exist without borders. Like this mantra, oh, well, the Statue of Liberty says that we should take all immigrants. No, it doesn't. And that's not, that the Statue of Liberty and that little poem on there wasn't part of the Constitution. Yes, we were a nation built on a lot of immigrants coming over because we had a lot of land to fill and a lot of need for immigration. And those immigrants came over legally through ports of entries where they were being asked to come over by the country of origin. There's never been a country that's existed that has totally ignored their borders. The U.S. should obviously have the right to have border control. Now, we may disagree on how many people should come over. Those are fair debates. You might think that the Germans should be allowed to say, again, fair debate. But just to have these empty platitudes that, oh, we have to be open, our arms have to be open to everyone, and that's what America's about. That's how to make America more American. That's what Reagan thought. No, that's totally not true. It's just more empty platitudes and speeches that are trying to get people riled up based on emotion rather than logics. I would ask Pelosi, how many people should we have? What's the number? Give me a ballpark figure of how many more immigrants we need to make America more American. Is there ever a number that would be too much? You don't have to give me a number to the 10,000. Give it to me to the 10 million. At what point can we say, oh, okay, time to pull back on this? But they don't want to have that discussion because that discussion would mean that would be a starting point where we can have a serious adult discussion. Instead, we get platitudes like, we have to make America more American and accept people of other cultures. Okay, that means nothing. That's not pragmatic.
Our common cause, your applaud for Ronald Reagan. Our common cause is to find and forge a way forward for our country. Let us stand for the people to promote liberty and justice for all as we pledge every day. And always, always keep our nation safe from threats old and new, from terrorism and cyber warfare overseas and here at home, to protect and defend. That is the oath we all take to serve in this body. That is the oath we take, to protect and defend.
Okay, well then, if you can say that, regardless of you disagree with the border policy with people on the Republican side, why are you calling something like a wall racist? Could I say that a firewall to protect from cybersecurity? Oh, you're racist against the Chinese. You think the Chinese might hack us? That's racism. Of course not. Even if we disagree on whether or not that policy is needed or if it would be successful, I'm not going to say that it makes you racist by advocating it. But that's exactly Pelosi's stance, that having a wall that is designed to protect Americans is somehow racist. Even though she voted for a fence, somehow fence not racist, wall racist. So if she can admit that they all take an oath to protect and defend, then why can't she admit, hey, I see what they're saying with the wall. They think it's for protection and defense, but I think it's misguided. I don't think it'll work, blah, blah, blah. No, instead she's just like, it's racist. So clearly she's contradicting herself here.
I close by remembering a cherished former member of this body who rose to become a beloved president of the United States and who last month returned to the Capitol once more, and he came this time to lie in state. That week, we honored President George Herbert Walker Bush with eulogies, tributes, and tears. Today, I single out one of his great achievements, working with both Democrats and Republicans to write the Americans with Disabilities Act into the laws of our land. Thank you, Steny Hoyer, for being such a big and important part of that. In 2010, we marked the 20th anniversary of the Act by making it possible for our colleagues with disabilities to preside over the House, by changing the mechanics of this podium. And in that spirit of equality and justice, let me announce that this afternoon, the first Speaker pro tempore I will yield to of the 116th Congress will be Congressman Jim Langevin of Rhode Island.
Well, that's a cool story. I don't know the ins and outs of the Indy. I know that it's been exploited a little by greedy lawyers going into small rural town shops. So you need to have wheelchair ramps, but in general, it's probably a good thing.
We accept responsibility as daunting and demanding as any that previous generations of leadership have faced. Guided by the vision and values of our founders, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and the aspirations that we have for our children, let us meet that responsibility with wisdom, with courage, and with grace. Together, we will let it be known that this house will truly be the people's house. Let us pray that God may bless our work and crown our good with brotherhood and sisterhood from sea to shining sea. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.
And so, yeah, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, it wasn't the worst speech. I think the most exciting thing from it is probably, or the most important thing is not what you heard, but what you didn't hear, right? Didn't say much about investigations into Trump. It's funny because that's kind of been their whole spiel that's been going on about how we're going to have all these investigations into Donald Trump, every area of his life. That's what they've been talking about, possible impeachment. Didn't hear any of that. It's the people's house. She talked about all kinds of things, which I think are good, getting all these, working in a bipartisan way to get all these policies done. Let's see if her actions meet up with her words. I would predict they end up spending more time just bashing Trump and trying to go after him for all sorts of things. So, I don't know. It wasn't the worst speech in the world, but to me, again, I understand these types of speeches aren't designed to have specific, be policy wonk discussions. This is specifically what we're going to do. But it seems like a lot of these speeches are just empty platitudes. Even if a Republican's giving them, I would probably say the same thing. So we'll see. I'm willing, as I said in my other video, to give her the benefit of the doubt in that I hope she proves me wrong. I hope that her and the Democrats do good and work with Trump, make the country a great place. But I'm very skeptical, and nothing in this speech I thought was groundbreaking. It just seemed to be more empty platitudes. So thanks everyone for watching. If you like, and subscribe. I'll try to be doing more videos of these speeches and things that come along. Again, that was just me off the cuff. I hadn't really seen that video before other than the first 3 minutes, so hopefully you enjoyed it. So like and subscribe, and I'll be posting some more material of things I'll be doing in the future here soon. So all right, everyone, have a good one.